Thank you, Prerna. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. While putting together our very special tech issue, we came across some interesting technologies which have come forward, of which our previous speakers have spoke about, whether it was AI, big data, and others. And we thought, why not have those interesting speakers coming together in the form of a panel discussion and talk about what kind of solutions, what kind of innovation, disruption they are making in the market. So first, if I could have each one of you talking about the solutions you have all put in place.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suresh. I'm the co-founder, as you heard, of a company called Crayon Data. It's an AI startup based out of Singapore. But before I talk about that, I mean, basically, the future of everything is very hard, right? I mean, the future of everything, if we knew it, if these panelists knew it, we wouldn't be here. We'd have a couple of $1 billion and we'd be doing something somewhere else. But I think we'll try and talk a little bit about some of the big trends that I think Ritu referred to, AI, and I think among us you'll see different types of expertise. So Crayon, like I said, is an AI startup. It's my second startup. The first was an analytics firm called Red Pill Solutions, Red Pill Analytics. It was a Singapore-based company that I set up before the word analytics became common. And that story ended rather well because IBM acquired us in 2009. And then I spent a couple of years there in a global role in analytics. Got a little bit bored because, once you work in a startup, you go to a large company, it is quite boring. They make you attend conference calls all the time. So I wanted to get back to doing something innovative. So the problem, and set up Crayon in 2013, and like I said, we're an AI and big data startup. And what we're trying to solve is a very fundamental problem that all of you face as consumers. I mean, just think about the problem of choice, right? Today, I think in the world, none of us have, we don't complain about we don't have enough choice. We have too much choice in everything, in movies, in restaurants, in books, in shopping, in travel. And what research shows us is that it is actually a big problem when you have too much choice. Because when you have too much choice, it's harder to make a decision. You spend a lot of time, you read a lot of information. You spend about 40 to 45 minutes making the average choice. And in case you think I'm joking, just think about the dinner you want to organize with your partner this evening or your friends, and you'll start off by saying, why don't we go there? Then someone will give another option. Then someone will say, oh, the food there is bad. Then someone will say the service there is bad. You go through a lot of discussion when you do this whole thing of coming up with a choice. So what Crayon wants to do is build this engine that knows you so intimately that it actually becomes like you're really somebody, like your own personal buddy, your own personal concierge, if you will, knows your tastes and your preferences, such that it helps you actually simplify and personalize all those choices. So that it knows that, if you look at me, if I like blue, why the hell is Amazon or Flipkart or anybody else showing me anything else other than the color blue, because that's my personal taste. So we're building that kind of an engine. And the whole idea is that we know that if we show people 4 to 5 really relevant choices, which are very, very personal, then you save a lot of time, that people are happier, they make more decisions, they actually spend more money. We call it moving from the misery of choosing to the magic of choice. And think of it like this. The process of choosing and making a decision is very hard. But when you make the decision and you get what you want, then that's magical. So that's really what the problem that we are solving is. And it's a fairly big problem. It's a global problem. It's pretty much there in, I think, like I said, every lifestyle category. How many of you have gone on the web to buy a single product or just book an air ticket, and then 45 minutes later, you find that you've gone on looking at more and more reviews, more and more, clicked on more and more links, etc. And it is really, there is a rabbit hole out there. You go deep into that when you go into the internet. So that problem is very, very big, and that's what we're trying to do. Our business model is very interesting because we don't want to be a consumer play. I think you heard from the previous speaker that, one, there's a lot of capital involved if you want to go in and do this for consumers. What we do is that it's not necessarily the brick and mortar retailers, but we work with traditional companies like airlines, retail, banks, and credit card companies, hotels. And we tell them, listen, you've got a lot of customers. You've got a lot of data on those customers. What we can do is we can help you create this personal fingerprint, this personal taste fingerprint of every one of those customers. We can actually help you create a personal storefront, which is completely digital and unique to that If you have 100 million customers, we'll give you 100 million storefronts that can help you actually personalize the world for your customers. So that's what we do, and we built several patented IPs around it. We've built something that we call a taste graph. So imagine that our graph knows every restaurant, every hotel. In lots of cities, we know every attraction, every activity that's going on. And if I know that you're from Delhi and you know you like 3 restaurants or 3 activities in Delhi and you come to Singapore where I live or you go to Brisbane, I can say, based on your taste, let me show you exactly what would be right for you. So it's like what Spotify does to music is what we want to do to every lifestyle category in the world. So that's really the problem that we're solving. And it's interesting because of one reason, and it's a funny story. I ran away from statistics, mathematics, and technology all through school and college. And now God's way of taking revenge on me for all those classes I didn't go to is to make me actually do this for a living every day.
Okay, over to you.
Yep. That is very interesting. Good afternoon. I represent Scallop Technologies. I'm Ravi Shankar. I'm one of the co-founders. We at Scallop, we are focusing on developing IoT-based solutions. And as you heard Ritu speaking and Deepak, IoT by itself is not a solution, okay? I mean, you have to find users who can, who have some problems, which can be solved using IoT. Then the customers will start buying those. Our focus has been applying IoT into dairy industry. We focus on the upstream of the dairy industry. Milk, if you consider as a crop, is the biggest crop in the world. India's 4% of GDP is milk. 7% of GDP is dairy industry. I mean, if you consider cows and animal health care, feed fodder and everything, about 7% of India's GDP is dairy industry. And that is the most neglected part. I mean, we as consumers get to see milk or ice cream or curds in packet, but the source of the milk from the villages is a very neglected area. So our focus is putting sensors in the villages, starting from cows till the milk reaches the processing center, to track that as a supply chain. What are the inefficiencies in that supply chain? How can we help the farmers to produce better milk, better quality milk, get more yield from cows? How can you help the dairy companies like Amul or KMF or Hatson or Paras to get better realization per liter of milk? How we as consumers can get better quality milk, not just something that looks white, and how we as a nation gain better. So our focus has been on this. In the last 7 years, when we started working, we thought dairy will solve it in 6 months and get on to bigger things in life. And then the dairy industry started opening in front of our eyes how big it is. And today our focus is purely on dairy, at the moment at least. Although, as Deepak said, we have built our platform expandable. It could be expanded into cold chain for fruits, vegetables, or other things. Our focus purely is on dairy at the moment. We are in about 15,000 villages all over India in 12 states. We get about 5% of India's organized sector milk through our cloud system, through IoT-based systems that we have deployed in villages every day. And our customers love us. They keep us busy. We are fully on the right track at the moment.
My name is Girish. I run a company called Greytip Software. So the previous speakers have been talking about IoT, big data. We are a little more on the traditional business applications side. What we have set out to do is enable a large number of small businesses in India, essentially people who are first-time technology adopters, get in and use technology for their business process and to build efficiency. So that's where we started. So Greytip provides HR and payroll solutions to small businesses on a cloud platform. We started off selling software to larger entities. But today we enable small businesses to manage their complete employee process, right from payrolling, leave management, all compliances can happen on the system. Where we started off was we thought software would be used by the larger companies. But then as we started going in, we realized that large number of small companies across this country, people who are 20, 30, 40 employees, have a huge need for technology. But unfortunately, the traditional model of software deployment and delivery in India was not really helping them out. So over the last few years, we have been figuring out ways to get very affordable and world-class technology back to them. So today we serve about 5,500 customers. We enable about 750,000 pay records every month. We make sure that there is about 20,000 crores worth of salaries are annually dispersed without issues and hitches. So that's what we do. The product is called as Great HR.
Hi, good afternoon to all of you. I'm Amit from Polestar Solutions. We are into analytics. So as Ritu was mentioning in his speech that today, what data collection has become much easier. So what we see that all the enterprises are collecting a lot of data. And enterprises are calling the data as asset. However, they're not doing much about bringing certain insights from those data. So I'll give an analogy to this that, if you look at the data in a very small set, right, you are not able to bring out certain meaningful information. It's like looking at certain pixels of a whole picture. If you look at certain pixels, you are not seeing, what is there. But if you bring all those millions of pixels together, then you see a beautiful picture. And what we do is we look at the whole of data of the organization. We try to bring some story, certain meaning out of that data. Now, these enterprises, they, of course, moving towards a lot of automation. What I mean by automation is that they are bringing more and more technology into their organization, and which helps them to collect a lot of data. Now, that data itself is not the complete story. There's a lot of data in the external world in terms of social media, in terms of data which is collected by data collection companies, government data. If you look at all this data together, you suddenly see a different picture to what you are actually looking. And that's what we do by bringing different sort of technologies, big data technologies and AI, and we bring some meaningful information for the enterprises.
Thank you, Amit. So good, we have an interesting lineup of speakers. I mean, I'm sure we can't know the future of everything, but of certain things, yes, we can about big data, analytics, dairy, and people business, HR particularly. So the first question I want to throw upon to each one of you is more about, what kind of changes have you brought forward in your consumer buying decision behavior? What kind of changes have they seen? Would you like to talk about certain case studies, certain consumer practices?
Go ahead from that side, maybe.
Can you repeat? I could not hear you properly.
So I basically want to understand what kind of changes have you brought forward in the consumer mindset, particularly with the way the decisions were made earlier or the choices were made earlier to now. With your solutions, what kind of disruption has been brought forward?
All right. So as I said, basically, data just being there doesn't bring any change to the organization. It was there, a lot of data. Now, data comes in a lot of various forms, actually. There's a lot of data which is coming in form of images, in terms of videos, in terms of data which is typically structured data. Now, when I talk about disruptions, right, when I look at a certain image and bring certain information and combine it with the data which is there in their structured environment, that's a completely different insights which it brings. One of the disruptions that we brought was a bot that we built for the HR guys, right? So in enterprises, there are a lot of hiring basically takes place. Now there's a lot of interviews which is there happening across enterprises. So what we did is we created a bot which helps, which helps the interviewer in by suggesting certain questions, depending upon candidate's skill set and experience, what kind of questions the interviewer can ask. And while doing that, it was able to capture the answers which is coming from the candidate. And the bot has intelligence wherein it was suggesting the interviewer whether you should take the candidate or not. How we did that is looking at, lot of data which was getting generated through this process, and then there was a lot of AI which was put in, and then intelligence was being generated.
So, see, in terms of specific buying behaviors and how we have been able to kind of look at how people are buying and make some certain modifications. So, technically, technology buying, at least among small businesses in India, till now, if you have looked, there have been very, very few success stories of small businesses buying technology. So essentially what we set out to do was to try and understand why businesses are not adopting technology. What could be the reason why very small businesses don't want to buy, right? And then technically we went behind trying to create an ecosystem that would enable these businesses to get the technology organized. So for example, lack of trained manpower was one of the problems. So what we essentially did was we went behind, created training programs, created webinars, made training a part of a free service that we could provide, so that businesses would not now have this obstacle to technology adoption. Then we tried to bring in the concept of a free trial, or try before you buy, and then pay later. So essentially businesses that never could think of adopting technology without putting money upfront could now try it out, could see whether it would suit them, and then they could buy the technology. So what this has really done for us is a lot of businesses who typically not start off with a buying cycle are now starting off with a evaluation cycle. Okay, even though this may seem a little bit old hat, traditional technology buying by small businesses in India is still very low. Okay, technology adoption is not that great except on accounting software. Most of them don't have any other tools, especially when you move out of the IT world. A little beyond that, not many of them are very tech savvy. So by creating an ecosystem, allowing people to evaluate the software, allowing them to try the whole thing and keeping prices low, we are modifying this behavior and getting them to start evaluating and using technology. So it's worked well for us among the 5,500 customers. A lot of them are people who have come to try, figured out that this could be useful for them, and then gone on to become regular customers of the software.
As I said, we direct with the farmers. We said, okay, in India, on average, a farmer has 3 cows, right? While worldwide average is 1,000 average herd size of a number in the 1,000, but whereas in India, 3 cows is the average herd size. We said, okay, 3 cows is not a sustainable business. If you have 25 cows, you could make 1 lakh rupee per month. I mean, it's as good as working in a city. You can, in your village, you can earn 1 lakh rupee. So we thought, we started off trying to sell to farmers. This is how we could scientifically design a farm. This is how you could run it and things like that. But directly selling to farmer was a B2C model, and it didn't scale for us. So then we sort of pivoted and we started working with the dairy companies like Mother Dairies or Amuls or KMFs, because they have a very close relation with the farmers. Right? I mean, farmers pour milk day in, day out. I mean, every day twice they come and pour milk and they get paid for it. And they would like to know the farmers. Just like Amazon or a Flipkart or a Star Bazaar would like to know me as a customer, a dairy company would like to know the farmers. Every farmer's loyalty is important for them. So we started working with the dairy companies. When we started working with the dairy companies, it was even tougher than for working with farmers, but it was B2B. There were traditional companies. Dairy company has been in India for a long time. I mean, they say, we are collecting milk already. We are processing milk. What value do you want? Do you mean you come from IT and you want to teach me how to collect milk? I mean, that's how it started. But as they started seeing it, Now, they're asking more and more. My customers are telling me more and more, I want this feature. I want you to monitor and send me this alert. So now we can see that the companies like Mother Dairy and Amul, in the requirements, these things come as standard. I want this sensor, I want this cloud-based information, I want to do direct bank transfer to a farmer and things like that. So we believe up to some extent, in a small way, we have been able to bring about the change in the customer's behavior, which is the dairy companies and the farmers. I mean, it's in a very positive trajectory, is what I would say.
I think compared to actually solving a farming problem, we're doing something fairly shallow. But let me try and explain. We work with two sets of people, and I think we're trying to disrupt both. One is the client, who's actually the company that we work with and the manager in that. And second is that manager's consumer. Let me call the first person Anna and the next person Sonia, just as that. So how are we disrupting Sonia's life? We think that today everybody in the world, every Sonia, every human being in the world is getting completely spammed by irrelevant messaging about all the things that are out there, and they waste a lot of time. Our engine is enabling everybody to get something completely deeply personal and relevant, and something that's very much in line with their individual taste. So we think in some way we're disrupting. So today we touch about 125 million customers around the world on behalf of the clients, right? So that's something that we're doing for their consumers, for what we call that consumer Sonia, right? We have this big picture of Sonia and we say, what does she think? How do we actually make her life better? How do we simplify choice for her? So that's one part of what we do. But the route to all those 125 million Sonias when we're not a B2C company is the enterprise. And there are lots of people out there who are managers, who have traditional mindsets, who have traditional approaches to solving the problem. It's not a technology problem, it's not a process problem. Those can be fixed. That technology is available from lots of people in some ways. But for us, I think we're changing their mindset completely. What we're now saying is what used to take you, the way you used to do this work is you used to collect a limited set of data, you used to run some models, you used to do all of this. We will completely blow that away because from your data to actually being able to deliver a personal storefront to every one of your millions of Sonias, it takes you only 3 weeks. So we're completely shortening all of those cycles. We're making it much deeper because we're enabling them to know things about their customers that they never knew before. Because we are able to turn around and say, this is really what that person's tastes and preferences are, which you never knew.
Sure.
For example, if I just send this photograph of me to my engine, it should turn around and say, Suresh is the guy who likes blue and who has some quirky taste in clothes or whatever it is that it'll say. I mean, I don't know what it'll say, but it should say something like that. And so I think we're changing the lives of the managers in that sense by saying, we'll help you make more productive, we'll help save a lot of time for you, we'll help you understand your customers way better than you are today. And as a result of that, you are now able to compete. And this is for us the critical thing. We want the banks that we work with. We work with 3 of the largest banks in the world. We work with the leading banks in 3 different countries. We work with the best airline in the world. And for them, we want to tell them, listen, you can now compete. If you're an airline, you should be able to compete with an OTA. If you're a bank, you should be able to compete with a payment or a wallet company with saying, I'll disrupt it. If you're a retailer, you should be able to compete with the gentleman from Tamil Nadu who asked the question, how can you help that retailer actually compete with the types of Amazon by saying you know your customer as well? So that's the kind of change that we want to drive. And we hope that from 125 million customers that we're touching, we work with about 10 clients today worldwide. We hope to be working with about 1 billion customers over the next 3 years or so.
Okay, wonderful. So talking about the opportunity, all of you have touched upon so far and in future would be making an impact on. So is it more on the domestic front or the world is the stage for all of you? How does that work?
Would someone in the middle like to start or should I? Okay, we're fairly global, right? I mean, the company is headquartered in Singapore. We had development centers in Singapore and Chennai. We now, I think most of our development is done out of Chennai, but I think we work with clients around the world, the US, the Middle East, Asia Pacific. We work in a country like Myanmar, for example. So I think in that sense, client base is reasonably universal because the problem we're solving is fundamentally universal.
Sure.
Everybody has the same problem everywhere in the world, right? That of this too much of choice. So our talent pool is largely today India-centric. And I think that is great in some ways because I think we are actually developing people, and I think technologies out here. India's always had services companies. Now we're actually starting to build product companies out of India. And that's, I think, the India play for us. It is a challenge because we don't have, compared to people who are, let's say, in the Valley or even in Singapore, Israel, I think the impact we have, or the impact that the software programmer or the data scientist from India has is like far lower. But I think it's catching up pretty soon. So for us, I think the opportunity is, we wouldn't restrict it only to an Indian market in that sense already.
As I said, in India, the dairy industry that we focus on is a small farmer centered industry. So the products that we are building for the upstream, some of it is applicable for India, and we are also doing some projects in Nepal, in Kenya, in small ways in Tanzania, etc., where the situations are pretty similar. Very small holders, not big dairy farmers. Whereas if you look at, let's say, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, US, these are like large dairy farming communities. So there, some of our other technologies are applicable, things like cold chain monitoring or animal health, herd management systems, activity detection, heat detection, and things like that. We have not explored those, but potential is there. Whereas we are currently exploring, 95% of our revenue comes from India. Other 5% is through these projects in Nepal and Kenya, where it is still India-like scenarios at the moment.
So I think the question is on the opportunity that each of us pursue. See, for us as a company, I think India represents a huge opportunity. We are a company that can, whose product can be used by almost every industry in this country. Anybody having more than 10 tech are. So what we have seen is, as India is growing, post demonetization and GST have actually had a huge increase in number of sales. So what we have seen is there is a trend towards adopting technology. The small business owner is just now waking up to the possibility of what technology and automation can do for him. So we see a huge opportunity. Today we are mostly present in the metros, but Tier 2 city, as Ritu was also saying, or even Deepak. So Tier 2 is a huge opportunity. We are seeing extensive traction in businesses in smaller cities also wanting to use the software. We see that as a great opportunity. We are only about 5,000 customers now. The market technically has about 1 million companies out there. So that for us represents a very huge opportunity. And the kinds of customers we serve are across the industry spectrum. Schools, healthcare, manufacturing, services. So for us, we believe India represents a really great opportunity. So that's where we see most of our work coming from. But to a certain extent, we have also started diversifying. Middle East, we are doing a lot of work. We have some 200 customers there. So between
certain analytics and systems which were shown to the board that how this is how we run our business, and then moving on towards the rest of the things that typically happens in the board, which was kind of a very encouraging to us as well, seeing that technology we have been talking about from pretty long time, that technology is a strategic function of the organization, but it was not coming to the forefront. Now, when I heard about that incident, that kind of gave me a lot of confidence that this is at that very top of strategic function technology. With that, yes, so as I said, there's a lot of opportunities in India. As a company, we started focusing outside in international market as well from last year, and we'll be, of course, expanding to other geographies.
So while we spoke about opportunity and the consumer play particularly, are there any challenges you're all dealing with right now? I mean, while deploying your technology or changing that consumer behavior?
Well, if there wasn't challenge, we wouldn't be entrepreneurs. So there's a lot of challenges, and I think in any technology field, I think the biggest challenge is not the technology itself and building it and trying to grow it. It's, I mentioned this earlier, it's the mindset of the people who have to use it that I think is always the biggest challenge. And, driving that behavior change, trying to get them to let go of past ways of doing something. And so I think to me, that's always the biggest challenge. How do you change the consumer's behavior, your client's behavior? How do you change the way they approach the problem? And that can't be solved with technology. So that requires, I think, a tremendous amount of design thinking skills about the way you actually design everything, from the way the product works to the way you sell, the way they use it. But more than design thinking, I think it also really requires you to, I think, just market this really well. When I say market, I don't mean conventionally just put out ads and all that. I just think you've got to go out there, you've got to really be carrying the story, you've got to be working with people. They don't need to change. I mean, when I go and talk to a client, you say, yeah, I've done it like this for 10 years. Who are you to tell me it's different? And I will tell him sometimes, you know what, I've done this for 30 years and I know 10 times more than you. But that's not going to help. So you actually have to be able to get into their psyche and say, how do you get people to go from either having a fear of a new process, a new way of doing things, or sometimes it's just, I don't know where to start, and moving them over to a new way of doing things. For me, that's the biggest challenge in any big new technology thing that you're trying to do, which is mindset.
Pretty much the same. I think mindset is the limitation here also. I mean, one on the customer side, as I said, I've been doing dairying for, since my grandfather or whatever, even more. Now you are coming from Bangalore and telling me how to do, some of these challenges, but they are changing. The second mindset challenge is our team itself, right? I mean, if I want to hire, let's say, a big data specialist or an embedded programmer, if I call him for an interview, he will go to a website and see cows and he will decide not to come for an interview, right? I mean, so how do we change? How do we tell people that it's a cool industry to work for? I mean, how do I convince people that, it's a great place to work and it has a huge potential? So we are working on those things. Now, if you go to our website, you won't see that many cows. You will see, a high-tech cow. So we are working. I think mindset is the only, sorry?
Robot cow.
For France, yes, not for India. So mindset is the main challenge. We are working for it. Market is great. Customers would come around. I think we just have to work around these things and improve.
Hi. So some of the challenges are a little different from what we share, because what we do is a little more known subject. It's not a new subject. So some of the challenges we face is in terms of communication reach. India being such a huge market, spread over so many cities, across so many small businesses. The very relevant question for us is, how do you sustainably communicate to so many people? Okay, show them the benefit of automation. Tell them that there is a company sitting somewhere in Bangalore who can technically solve your problem. Okay, sitting remotely without sitting next to you or without coming and visiting your shop or small business. I think that's a critical problem that we face. That's one of the bigger challenges, because India is an economy where people love to talk to people. Okay, they want to buy from other people. They want somebody to come sit next to them and solve their problem. They are not US or a do-it-yourself kind of a model. So the challenges we face are mostly in terms of awareness building about a solution, about a business problem that they have, and that there could be a easy and a viable way of solving that problem. So I think that's a million-dollar question that most businesses that sell to businesses in India face, which is how do you sustainably reach out and bring awareness among small business owners. So it's a work in progress. I'm hoping that I will be able to quickly solve it as soon as possible, because the person who solves that problem would definitely be a fairly big winner as far as this game is concerned.
So one of the challenge that is always there is human habits. So when we talk about bringing some new technologies, of course, there are certain challenges being faced in old habits die hard. So there are people who would like to do old methods, and that's always being a challenge, pushing it through the new technologies, through those habits. Another challenge, of course, is from an Indian geography is the data that is available, which is more macro data availability. So if I talk about if I want income data at a district level, then it's difficult to get it compared to if I talk about US market, the data availability is much better. So bringing out certain analytics for that market is much easier than compared to domestic market. Those are the typical challenges that.
Sure. Thanks. So with this, I would like to throw open the floor for questions. Please raise your hand, and the mic will be passed on to you. Can we have lights in the audience, please?
Hi, my question is particularly to Mr. Shankar, because you said you want to get into a zone of understanding if somebody you like blue and people get to know you like blue. Where does privacy fall into in all these categories? What is that fine line that we should not be crossing? And keep the consumers also in a, see it's data privacy, right? One point of time you're including my personal life also. So where is that thin line that we should eventually stop in all this technological things and tractions that we're doing across?
I was waiting for that question from somebody. So I have two answers to that question, and I'm going to first talk to you about the general answer on privacy, and secondly, the Crayon take, or my take on how we do it in our company. And that's less interesting. But the overall answer I have is, if you think anything about your life is private, all of you in this room, forget it. Your life is not private. You are tracked. Everything about you is known to the world. It is not Aadhaar that is the problem. It is your mobile phone that is the problem. So forget the fact that you think anything is private. It is not private. Go to Facebook, go to Google. They have settings in which you can look at the data they have on you. And I'm saying this extremely seriously. Just go to those settings and look at how much data Facebook and Google have about you. It is available to you. Try to download that, because they allow you to download that information, and you will be shocked. Okay? So your life is not private. Forget about it. The only way your life is going to be private is if you don't go back to that old Nokia phone, that little thing that was actually the best thing that ever got invented in the world, that couldn't track you, right? So I think we have to accept as consumers that this is the price that we are paying when we want things for free. So I personally think the world of privacy just doesn't exist at all, and I personally got used to it. Now, I'm not condoning the practices of any of the companies that have tracked or sold this data or abused it. I'm just saying it's a reality today. When we built the engine 5 years ago, we built in Crayon, however, we took a different view. We said we want to be able to know you as a person without actually tracking you everywhere you go on the internet. What we call personalized without personal information. So a lot of the work that we did, and we had to do extra work on the algo for this, was that we said we don't want to know who you are. We want to personalize based on what you do. So for example, like I said, when I use the example of myself in this photograph, I don't want to know Suresh. I just want to know that if I can see 10 photographs of Suresh in the clothes he wears, if all the clothes are slightly quirky, blue, etc., my algo can extract that fact that, this person, whoever it is, likes blue and likes some quirky things and whatever it is. So we're trying to actually build an engine that is very highly respectful of not knowing identity, but looking at what you do to say, this is what I think I can predict about you. The other thing that we do is, because we work behind the enterprise, we don't actually see we see individual customer data, but we don't know who the person is. And we tell all the companies we work for, you must get explicit consent for every possible use of the data that you do, but we can't control it. So that's how at least our engine is designed to work. The third thing I'm going to talk, anyway, I think is about the future of everything, but I will tell you about the future of what's going to happen on privacy over the next 2 or 3 years. First, I think I'm really happy Cambridge Analytica happened to Facebook, because I think, going back to the first thing, people are now aware of how much data about themselves is out there on the internet. What's going to happen is that Facebook is not going to change, neither is Google, neither is any of these companies that take your data. Regulators will step in, and the regulation will not be led by India, it will not be led by China, it will not be led by the US, though of course in China they track everything that you do. It will be led by the European Union. The GDPR thing kicks in May, where they're going to say, listen, you have a fundamental right as a consumer to own the data about yourself. The second thing that's going to happen is that, apart from regulation, is what's going to happen on privacy is that a wave of entrepreneurs, we're thinking about doing this in Crayon, we have been for the last 2 years, is going to start telling, if the data is yours, why can't you monetize that data for yourself? Why should Facebook or Google make money selling an ad to allow someone to sell something to you if the data was yours in the first place? Why wouldn't the brand directly pay you the money to send you that message? Right? So there's this whole new wave of businesses that are going to spring up, which is about saying, how do I help the user monetize the data about themselves for themselves? So I think these are the 3 big trends that things that will happen. I could talk about this for another year, and maybe we should talk outside just to not bore the rest of the audience with that.
Hi, Girish sir. So my question would be, as you've said, that small businesses are unable to adapt the technological innovations because of lack of resources. So, what do you think about the traditional businesses?
Could you hear? We can't hear anything, ma'am. You'll have to either speak louder or...
So as I've mentioned that small businesses are unable to adapt to technological innovations because of the lack of resources. So what would you like to talk about the traditional businesses?
Would you like to take that? You work with a lot of small businesses.
Traditional? We are sorry we didn't get the question properly.
Yeah, so as I've mentioned, so as you said that small businesses are unable to adapt the technological innovation because of lack of resources. So what would be your take on the traditional businesses?
What's your take on the?
Traditional businesses.
Okay,
Traditional businesses.
Okay. See, I think what we are seeing as a trend is people are hungry for technology. They want to use technology. Okay, they believe that technology will really help them. Now, the question is for them also is, how do they adopt it? Okay, how are there enough vendors who will be able to give them the technology at a price point that they can afford, provide them either the resources, the tools, or the training, and help them get the business results. So I think small businesses, in a sense, behave very similarly. They could be a traditional business, which is a brick and mortar, or a services business. So all of them, at least from what we have seen, selling to so many customers, we see them behaving similarly. So as I said, an ability to build an ecosystem where the resources are available, where they're engaged in a way that they understand technology and technology adoption, I think that would be the way of the future. That's what would help them to actually implement and leverage technology. That's my take on this.
And I believe, as Deepak mentioned, that very well, he put it in a right way, that if the scale is not there in traditional business, right? So there are a lot of technological platform available which should be used, by those traditional businesses. If the scale is there in traditional businesses, and then of course you should think of, bringing certain kind of technology adoption within the, business so that, you can compete with the rest.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, a big hand for our panelists. Please, let's all thank them. I request a session moderator, Ms. Punita, to please present mementos to our speakers. Can we have the mementos on stage, please? Mr. Suresh V. Shankar, founder, Crayon Data. Ladies and gentlemen, please keep the applause going for Mr. Suresh V. Shankar, founder, Crayon Data. Mr. Girish Raoji, co-founder and CEO, Greytip Software. Mr. Girish Raoji, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Ravi Shankar G. Shirur, co-founder, Scallop Technologies. Mr. Ravi Shankar G. Shirur. And Mr. Amit Alsi-Saria, co-founder and MD, Polestar Solutions and Services. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for a part-packed session. I'm sure all of us have gained immensely. And a big thank you to Ms. Punita for moderating the session. Moving forward, it's time to kickstart our second panel discussion on the theme Building Reliability at Scale. Please join me in welcoming the session panelists. We have with us Mr. Hari Krishnan AS, co-founder, Detect Technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome Mr. Hari Krishnan.